Isn't it crazy that after all these years, I do it all the time, like you forget to take yourself off and mute. I mean, at every Zoom call I'm on, that happens. It's like, what?
Uh, yeah, it does. That's okay. We're not alone. We're not alone. We know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, Marianne is always saying, you're still on mute. I can hear you. Oh, yeah.
You're muted. But our producer decided to try something new in creating these podcasts, and he wanted us to have chit chat before it comes on, kind of like backstage sort of.
Oh, I see. Very
roll.
fun. Good.
All right, then let's go ahead and start. You ready?
Yeah.
Lorna, all set?
Yep. What's that? Sorry.
We don't have the little voice saying,
3, 2, 1.
You're listening to the Isn't She Amazing podcast with your hosts, Marianne Clyde and Lorna McGill.
Hi, I'm Marianne Clyde.
And I'm Lorna McGill.
And we're here with the Isn't She Amazing podcast. Lorna, who's our guest today?
Amy Clark.
Yay!
Yay. So excited to have you here.
Good morning. It's great to
So
be
tell
with
us-
both of you.
yeah. Tell us about Amy. Give us some background.
Yeah, absolutely. I am joining from my home in Middletown, Delaware, northern Delaware, south of Philadelphia. I have my wonderful golden retriever lying next to me. He usually does. He's my work partner every day. So Max hangs out with me. But I'm thrilled to be here and talk about, so much in terms of leadership and growth. And that's been my passion, my love, and it touches my heart. And probably more so over the last 10 years than it ever has before. And part of that is just the learning I've had as a woman in leadership and in business, and been in the HR field for over 20 years. And I've enjoyed it so much. It's brought me to today. And so I'm just so grateful for all it has taught me, and giving me the opportunity to also become a founder and executive coach with Growth Minded Leadership Group, where I coach women executives and senior leaders. So it's been quite the joy in building it. I've had a lot of fun, in all the work that I've done, and including becoming an author. So I'm very grateful, very grateful.
And you're a two-time bestseller, right?
Yeah. So thank you. Look at those balloons.
Sorry about my balloons.
That was like amazing timing.
You're gonna have to figure that out.
Here's her book. It looks like it's backwards, but Isn't She Amazing? Presents Growth Point with Amy Clark. And we'll put a picture of it up on the
Thank you.
screen. So it'll be frontwards on the screen.
So
Yeah.
just listen to that great intro of who you are. Like when you're working with executive women, are there like certain challenges that you see kind of weave through everyone?
Yeah. And very similar in some, different than what I've dealt with too. And much of it stems from what we all hear is authenticity in leadership, and it not understanding who you are as a leader or identifying who you are as a leader brings up the challenges of feeling like these beliefs or past stories or experiences that we've had begin to limit us, and we get into this shoulda, woulda, coulda situation, like, and yet we have a hard time figuring out how to get out of that, and out of the mode of I've been told this, so I must be this. So that's one thing. The other thing is, being a woman that has worked primarily in male dominated industries, what that looks like and feels like for a woman. I mean, it's one of these things. You enter a room and you are one of the few women in that room, and feeling like you need to prepare more. You need to come off even more confident, and yet you don't even know what that means. Or you need to have executive presence, yet you don't know what that means. So
I totally understand that, because being in the financial world, it's like surrounded by men, and you're like,
Yeah. And so then you kind of get to the point of, okay, I'm just going to conform to the people around me because they must be doing something right.
Yeah.
And then you lose yourself. And
Big
then people are
assumption.
not really getting the benefit of everything you can do. So those are the kinds of things that, and so ultimately here's the impact. Okay. The impact is, we're all leading businesses. We are looking to grow our business. Whatever it's generating revenue, increasing profit, increasing our impact, the purpose and the mission of what we do. It ultimately impacts it. It does, because it impacts you and how you lead and what and the choices you make, but also how your team responds to you. And so these are very important things to be thinking about in terms of like the outcomes of the business you want to see. And so that is part of our conversations to say, what are you missing in terms of your business and what could be causing it? Because it is important to connect the two.
Those are important questions. And,
Yeah.
and you refer to throughout your book to so-and-so reached a growth point. So-and-so reached another kind of growth point.
Yeah.
So there's various kind. What do you mean by growth point, and what does that look like?
A growth point is when you identify you could have been better.
Kind of like one of these.
Yeah, it's like, duh. And so here's the moment though. Okay. We go through, it could be our personal life, professional life, and you could have had that presentation, that proposal you did, that feedback session you had with the person, whatever it is. And you sit back and you're like, oh, I know I could have shown up differently. I wish I would have said this. I wish, you kind of wish in your comebacks. I know that's kind of I don't mean it in the way it sounds, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I wish I would have said that because that would have really hit home.
Or I wish I hadn't said that.
Yeah. Or the other, yeah. I wish I would have just stopped talking. Yeah, so those are growth point moments. But what happens, and what I found, because it's in my story and the people I share in the book, is that you do that, and then you don't really have a good way to process it and know what to do with it. And then you go on with your life. You go on to the next thing. You keep coming back to it, but you're not doing anything with it. So it's just step one is identifying that, yeah, I see this happened to me. And now you need to dig into why. And doesn't matter. I mean, some things people give you feedback, thank you, you decide if it's relevant to what you're trying to do, or you say, you know what, okay, that was just a moment. But then you have it and you're like, if it keeps becoming a moment, something's off. So you need to really think about it. So that's the idea of it is, and part of the book is what I wanted to give people is a way to say, this is what growth looks like. And when you have a good framework, you can make the most of those learning experiences.
Because those moments that keep repeating themselves
Mm-hmm.
become characteristics of you
Yeah.
that could be holding you back.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you know what? I want to stop doing this now and start doing
Yeah.
something else instead.
Yeah.
And in the book, you use your initial growth moment. Not that it's the initial growth moment. You've
I
had
was just
Yeah.
gonna
them
ask
all
that.
our lives.
Yeah, we have,
But,
yes.
but
What
there
was
was a
your
significant growth moment for you. What was that caused you to write the book?
Yeah. Um, it was when I talk about vision. It was a conversation I had with who's now my mentor and dear friend Oleg Konovalov. He
I couldn't pronounce his last name.
yeah, he's an amazing man. He's one of those people you want in your life. He can say 10 words and completely shift the way you think about something, and you're like, oh. And I value that so much from him. And so it was the conversation I had with him. I was interested in his certification program on visionary leadership coaching. So it was my first conversation. And it was his first question. I mean, it was before anything else. And what do you believe? And I said, I'm like, and at first I'm kind of like, all right, are we talking about God? Are we talking spiritual? Right. And no, and again, I fumbled. I mean, it was just it's a simple question, but it's a very difficult question.
Right.
Because, and I realized I'm starting to overthink. I'm overthinking, I'm overcomplicating. And I need to get clear on what it is I believe in and who I want the lives I want to be part of, and being more curious about what that is. That was the pivotal moment for me. And it also said to me, as I figure this out, I'm writing a book. So it was, I wasn't that clear about it in the book, but that itself, and there's so many, but when I think of that one connected to the book, as you asked, Marianne, it was that, because I think it just really got me thinking, here's why I haven't, and here's how I can be of help to people. So
Oh, I love that, because
yeah.
once you recognize what it is that you're struggling with, first of all, that shows you, well, you're obviously not the only person in the world dealing with that.
Right.
That
Right.
so many other
Right.
women deal with what you're dealing with, which automatically, once you resolve it, even though the resolution is a lifetime thing very
Yeah.
often, but
Yeah.
once you begin to grow in that area, it gives you so much credibility
Yeah.
to lead others, because there are leaders out there that don't have the credibility, who have not really worked through their own stuff.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is, it's hard work.
It's hard work. Yeah.
It
But you
is.
created a program out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have people discover these growth points,
Mhm.
and there's a growth point about creating a vision, I think.
Mhm.
And how does that work?
Mhm.
How does
Yeah.
somebody really create a vision?
Yeah. It starts with, I I was actually thinking about this yesterday, because in the conversation I was having with somebody, they said, I'm in my head too much. And I said, well, you have to get in your head to be able to get out of your head. You have to know yourself.
Mm.
You have to understand what makes you tick, what your tendencies are. And it starts with what you value as a person. Okay, so we're in business, so we think about our business values. It starts with what you value as a person, as you. What makes you who you are? Because when you understand that, you start to connect. Okay, now I understand why I react the way I do in these situations, or why maybe I'm less tolerant in some other situations. You get to know yourself and the behaviors, and so then you begin to say, all right, I know I value this, and I know I'm not showing up in this way. I don't want to change this value, and it's very important to me. And so here's how I need to show up. You start with that, because then, and the visioning exercise is really getting to the heart of not only the contribution you want to make, it becomes less about you and more about the impact, who counts on you, and the impact you have on them. And by extension, you think of it, the world.
Yeah.
I mean, really, you think of it in that way. And so it gets to, I believe in, and so that, and the people that benefit from what I do get this. And so for me, I believe our contribution to the world begins with how we view our own growth. And that's why I think about growth point, how we view our own, and then we think about the contribution we want to make and people who will benefit from what we do. And this goes along personally, but in business too. When you think about any business, and it's not necessarily just, mission-based, purpose-driven businesses, your Fortune 5s, yeah, they answer to shareholders ultimately, right? But they need to think about who benefits from what we do. Because if we get clear on who benefits from what we do and how we speak to them, other things will follow. We are then meeting, I mean, a lot of variables to that. I know I'm simplifying it, but really, what a vision does for you, it gives you something to say. It's not, well, I say there's a statement. It becomes a feeling, an emotion that you are able to communicate in a way to other people that in their interaction with you, they want to be part of it.
Yeah.
So this is not a one exercise thing. This is something you start inner, and you think about how you communicate that and how you connect people with that, to really help it come to life for you. And it's something you aspire to make a reality today. So, I look at my vision. I mean, it may take 10, 20 years. I don't know. I don't have a timeline. It doesn't matter. I just aspire to make it a reality every day. And as I experience things, then I know what I need to shift.
I love the way you pinpoint that when you're working on your own stuff, you're creating your own vision. Every impact you make, every decision you make, every growth point you encounter,
Yeah.
and I seem to encounter those things like
All the time.
times a day.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
But every time you do that, you are actually, Lorna and I were having a discussion about this the other day about, because I'm a big proponent of changing the world, and
Yeah.
but the way you describe it is simply every time we change ourselves, every time we create a better energy around us and the people who need us and the people who benefit from our messages, that raises the energy on the planet, which really needs to happen.
Yes.
And
Well, and
makes
it's like,
the world a better place.
well, and
Mhm.
it's like a ripple effect. I've been thinking about that a lot. Like it is like you start and you're doing a little and you touch this person, you touch this person, you touch this person, and it's,
Mhm.
you're just like casting it, but it's just kind of rippling along very slowly, and you may not see that.
Yeah.
Even what the effect that you've had as it's kind of rippling away even from you. But yeah, I love what you said about, like knowing what you value. I mean, I
Yeah.
went through a lot of that when I started going through my transition, and I had someone ask me, what are your values, or what do you value? And I was like, why do I have to keep talking about what I value? I need an answer what I need to do like now. But as you start to really think about that, you realize the times that you may not have been happy in your life, or that you've bumped, it's because you're bumping into those values of what's important to you. Or, that's what I personally found is that was the constant, that was that rub, because you're like, there's something about a value that I have that is now rubbing. I don't know if that is something that you
Yeah.
see.
Because you need to name what it is. You need to name it. You need to know what it is, because otherwise you're just wondering. And then what happens is you start to external. It's like everybody else but me. It's because of so and so, this and that, whatever, this situation, that situation, or this change, where leadership starts with leading yourself. That's where it begins.
Yes.
And so the way you said that, Lorna, is exactly right. Like, I know it's butting up against this value. It doesn't necessarily mean I can't overcome that. It's identifying it and say, okay, I get it now. So, and now I can see clearly, more clearly, like what somebody else might value, and kind of hunch that a bit based on maybe an interaction you have or whatever that is. But when you do that, you know that there's going to have to be some flex, and what is it that either you will allow, accept, and to help you then move through something that might be a difficult situation. And and it's just an important thing in any part of life, how you compromise, but you have to know where your baseline is. You have to know what
And I
matters
think
to you and why.
And I think that's what you just said is really
Yeah.
true, is it's like your value, you may value something differently than I do. And so when you do, you're both kind of rubbing up against, because it's that value there, it's the same thing. You're talking, it looks on the surface that it's the same thing you're talking about. But when you go down a level, you're valuing it different. So you're viewing it different. You're viewing this, or the answers, you're listening, you're hearing it different, because you're hearing it from your true values are.
Yeah. And, and to talk about just for a second, an example of this. So one of my values is excellence. Okay. And very general term, people are like, well, of course I strive for excellence. Like I know I am a stickler on some things, and that equals excellence to me. And I know it doesn't, it's just, I'm trying to work on that, because that's not necessarily it. And so that's the kind of thing I've identified. Like, it doesn't I need to be a stickler and any little thing. It just, this idea of perfectionism, this is another thing, I talk to women about quite often, and I've had to overcome. It's like, when is 80% okay? It doesn't mean I'm not excellent, because what happens is if I try to be excellent at some details, I am not excellent at something else. And then what happens is when I'm talking to somebody, or if you submit something to me, Lauren, and we're talking about it, and I see these little things and they're just like bugging me, I know people sense that in me. And how does that, it's
Mhm.
causing disconnection between the two of
Right.
us. And so I
Right.
need to recognize that and know that excellence isn't just one thing. It can be a variety of things. And it's a balance of, okay, yeah, I know these things here, but it'll be fine.
Right.
Your definition of it is different. And it doesn't mean that you're less than or I am. It's just, it's knowing these things and how it is impacting the way you communicate and connect with people. Um, that is the growth point right there. It's like, all right, I have to say to myself, Amy, stop. Because
It doesn't have to be perfect.
it's
I mean, I'm the
just
same way. I
stop.
mean,
Right. There's no such thing. There is no
right.
such thing. And what happens to me is I then delay doing something because it's not quite there. And then by extension, I feel like, oh man, I don't feel like I'm living by my value of excellence. It's fascinating when you think about it that way. But those are some of the coaching sessions you go through and you just think about, okay, what does that really mean?
Mhm.
So,
So I
Right.
know a big point for you is
Mhm.
identifying your mindset and establishing a growth mindset.
yes.
And you have some examples in your book too, just line by line on what is a fixed mindset
Yeah.
that keeps you stuck, and what is a growth mindset, and how to use that and how to tweak that.
Mhm.
And how does one do that? How do you coach someone to identify their fixed mindset and then tweak it enough to turn it into a growth mindset?
Mhm. Mhm. Um, and example of that, I think that comes to mind is somebody that I'm working with that is, I'm just going to get settled with the fact that I won't get promoted. I mean,
Ooh,
that's a very strong statement, right?
Yeah.
It hits your gut when I hear that. And maybe this is what I'm good at. And I just keep doing that. And so the exercise of the values and the vision for her, I went back to that and said, okay, how does that, and that may be okay. I wasn't going to judge her. If that's what she wants to do, okay, let's go look at this. Remember, this is what you said. Is this what you still want? Well, yes. Okay. So with what you want, with what you just said, where's the difference? Do you see what could be possible for you? And oftentimes the question I do ask, because this happens, is what are you avoiding?
mhm.
What are you
Great question.
avoiding?
Great question.
That's a great question.
Because, in this particular case, it's, well, I just don't know how to speak up anymore. Because now I look like, I'm speaking up too much. And it's like, here she comes again to speak up about herself.
So I'm going to
Okay, now
shut
you
down.
get to the nuts and bolts of this, because it doesn't have to look that way. So it's reminding yourself of what it is you're looking to achieve and the ambitions you have in your life. To say, is what I'm doing right now getting me closer to that?
Mhm.
And sometimes, yeah, we need a break. We just need to, like, I need some silence.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
is natural, that is okay, that is needed. I've done that many times because it really does help put in perspective and remind you, this is that important to me. My goals are worth more than any of the problems or the struggles I will have to get there. And you've got to get in, and coaching helps you do that in a way of just some of the things we've just talked about, to go back to what you envision of what are you trying to avoid,
Mhm.
and what are you afraid of?
Mhm.
The other thing that does happen oftentimes with these, and I speak to it in my book and my own experience, is you go back to you can go back to your early childhood, your teenage years, your early school years, and you think about those moments that have formed you. And where one of them for me, I'm a very loyal person. I respect authority to fall. I mean, like, and it comes from my upbringing with my father and with my mother. Very, very structured family, very supportive, loving family. And I grew to respect both of them because as the youngest of 7 kids, I was searching for who do I learn from? Oh, I gotta, and it was just, there was so much going on. And I felt like this, I'm the youngest of 7 looking up like all this stuff's happening. And so I attached myself to the structure and feeling like, okay, I can learn from my dad. I can learn from my mom, my older sisters. And that brought up this sense of loyalty that I have today that is still good and is always going to be ingrained in me. But I also know when I overuse it, and I overuse it in a way that I forget myself. So those are the kinds of things and conversations that are important to get into coaching sessions to understand what's brought you here today.
So that's one of the tools you give yourself, you teach people how to do, which I think is very creative. You
Mhm.
develop playlists,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So that helps you cope, helps you with
Yeah.
the decisions you're making, the way you're
Yeah.
quantifying your beliefs and so forth. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we know playlists today, and I think of it differently when I was a kid. The playlist was the mixed tape at the time. So
It took a while to make that playlist.
yeah.
It was a process.
It's one of those things, those manual recorders. Oh man.
Or you're listening to the radio and you're like,
Yes. And like, well, that's why I say like the DJ comes on, and you're like, oh, I gotta stop it before the DJ comes back and starts talking about it. But anyway, but what I remember about those moments is the feeling I had and listening to songs and just what it brought to me. So it brings something like of inspiration, or when you're sad, it comforts you. When you're scared, maybe you just need to stay in the moment, and some song just reminds you of that. So a playlist in terms of growth, you can certainly go to the point of saying, here are the songs that kind of pump me up and how I'm going to change for the better. The playlist for growth follows the same concept. It is a framework that says, okay, you start with vision, you understand yourself better. You set intentions to move in these habits that help you get to where you want to be. And then you have this rhythm of contemplation, and they all play on the music. So it's a sound of vision, how you amplify your awareness, structure your intentions, and get a rhythm to contemplate. And all of this comes together. You start there, and then you have your vision. It's clear to you, and it feels very you're very connected to it. You've talked with people about it. And then you have a moment where, you realize you didn't show up somewhere, or you're really struggling. You're like, I don't even know what to do next. That's what, it could happen when you're you're reflecting on your results. The playlist comes in just like a playlist to music. You can decide where in the playlist you go. You can rewind back to, what, I need to understand myself a little bit more on this, or my intentions. Did I do what I said I was going to do? And if I didn't, or if these habits just aren't working for me, how do I need to change them? And so it's the same idea of saying, once you've structured, and just like you've created your I will use current terms, more of the Spotify playlist or your Amazon Music, whatever it is you use, and you've got that road trip playlist or whatever it is, this is the same kind of concept. You've built it. And now as you're going through life and business and as a professional, you go back to that and say, okay, where in here is going to help me through this moment right now? And that's the piece that has been missing, for so many, because they haven't had this kind of structure, this thing to go back to help them move through those moments.
It all gets so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So that's why the structure is so important.
Yeah.
Which why people should work with a coach anyway, because even Lorna and I talked about too is we don't sit and have those conversations with ourselves like,
Yeah.
gee, I wonder what would happen if, or I wonder what I'm really thinking here,
Yeah.
but when somebody asks you the question and really wants to participate in listening to you and helping you figure it out, it gives so much more personal strength. It gives so much, it's that level of support that really says, okay, so this is the way you believe about that.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do today
Yeah.
to make that happen. And,
Yeah.
and that's where the coaching really, you know, the rubber meets the road.
Well,
Yeah.
it's always so
Like,
hard
what
to
are you
see it
gonna
with
do?
yourself. Like you can
Yeah.
often see other people and you think, oh, I can see where they're stuck, or, but you
Yeah.
can't see it with yourself as easily.
It's hard, all of us, it's hard for us to really identify our own problems and to know that that's what they are. And so, I've had coaches,
Mhm.
throughout time, and what I appreciated the most is they were a mirror for me, by asking certain questions that, and I would say there were times where I said, I just don't want to answer that because I wasn't ready,
Yeah, totally
that's okay.
legit.
And then I had one coach who said, I don't want to hear an answer. I don't know. And I kept saying it. I said, well, you put it in my head and I really don't know. But but the thing is, it's they're that person that they serve as a mirror and a reminder of what it is you want to achieve. And I've also had experience, unfortunately, where people who had coaches or were given a coach and feeling like, okay, there's something wrong with me. Obviously, something needs to be fixed with me. Or, oh man, I'm almost out the door. They're giving me a coach. That is not the purpose of a coach.
Right.
Okay. The purpose of a coach is exactly what you're talking about, Marianne. It's this thought partner who is walking alongside of you because you have an interest. You're already successful at what you're doing.
Yep.
You already are. You're choosing that. And when you're choosing that, you're also choosing to say, I know things around me are changing. People that are working with me are changing. Different generations are coming into the workforce. There's different challenges, and I can't use the same roadmap or thought process I did before. It's not going to continue to work. And a coach helps you move through that, identify those things. Now, there are times as a coach where I say, I have some advice or it's questions. It's this mutual respect and understanding about what you're looking for from your coach. But those are the beautiful moments that can happen, and people seeing like, I get it. And and I want people to be able to move forward without me.
Exactly.
Move forward without me.
Right.
I'll always be here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Huge point though,
Yeah.
because what you're doing is building resilience, building
Yes.
strength, building
Yes.
insight, building skills,
Yeah.
and building a tool belt, which is very insightful. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So,
Good. Yeah.
so, okay. So with our audience, they're listening to us talk about coaching. You've got some really great pointers in your book, so everybody should get your book and
Thank you.
just have those tool belt, little tools in their tool belt. But what would you want to leave our audience with that you really want them to remember? Yes, you need a coach. It's okay to need a coach. But what else would you like to leave with our audience that kind of give them a place to go from here?
Mhm. Well, first, a message that we all have the ability, and you all have the ability to create what your better tomorrow is. You do.
Mhm.
What is important to know is it is not going to go at the pace that you want it to, because it is not just about you. We talk about you in a coaching session, but it's about you in terms of your interactions with others. So the first and foremost thing to do is really get in touch with what your values are and how to be thinking about them. And I would say, you're right, Mary, my book gives a good framework for those things and as a way to get started. There are worksheets in there. This is actually a working reading book
Yeah.
to go through these steps, to start going through them. But, it's for the future that you want to create for yourself. It is about choosing success, choosing to be confident. And what is the one thing that you might be overthinking today that is keeping you from doing that?
Great
So
advice.
I think it's more of the question and just the thought process that goes in our minds, because I have been there. I still get there. And it's not meant to deflate like, oh, I'm never going to get over this. That's not what it is. It's amazing to me because when you have a growth mindset, these things come up and you're better equipped to move through them. But there are going to be times where you're just unsure. You don't know what to do, but you are better for it. You are stronger, more resilient. And, you're curious about why that is. So, choose confidence, choose success, look for what you're overthinking.
Great
advice.
advice.
Amy Clark, executive coach. Thank you for your pointers today.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Been a great conversation. Lots of great takeaways. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
You're welcome.
You're doing
Thank
awesome
you,
work.
everybody. Thank you very much.